Hi, welcome to another episode of Look Ma No Hands. My name is Linda, and on this channel I talk about all my hobbies, which are crochet, painting, reading, watching TV and movies, both on streaming and in the theaters, and pretty much anything else I can think of. So, if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm glad you decided to take a chance and see what I'm all about. And to my returning viewers and subscribers, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. So let's dive right in. This week, as you can see what I'm wearing, I made yet another divine beanie in that ice cream cone style. This week I decided to add the brim in a brown, kind of like a light brown tan color, to make it look truly like an ice cream cone. Still did the funky pom-pom on top for the cherry on top, and then with the yarn that I had left over after making the hat, I decided to make it into a cute little scarf to coordinate. So that's what I have on right now, and I'm burning up, so I'm going to try and talk fast and get this done so I can take off the hat, which is covering up my really messy hair right now, and get this scarf off because I am so warm. So these are two of the things that I made this week. I also made another divine beanie using Vanna's Choice yarn that I had in my collection / library / stash. It was one skein of kind of like a mossy green color, so I stitched that up and gave that to my mom. She really likes having nice little winter hats to wear, so yeah, I just enjoy making hats for her so she has a cute little wardrobe of winter hats to keep her warm. And then I also made a V scarf by Donna Wolfe. The yarn that she used was I want to say a sport weight yarn, but I chose to use the pattern since it's pretty simple, not any real complicated stitches or anything. It's basically just double crochets and chain stitches. The yarn that I had, I think, was probably more of like a 5 weight. So I followed the instructions for the same number of chains, but I don't think I did quite the same number of rows that she did, because it would have made it almost more like a shawlette that way. So I stopped after maybe like 6 or 8 rows. It turned out really cute. Again, it's another one for my mom. We had found the yarn when we were at the Goodwill doing some thrifting, and I said, "What do you think of this yarn?" She's like, "Yeah, it's cute. What would you make with it?" And I'm like, "Well, the amount that's here, I could probably only make like a scarf." She's like, "Or maybe a hat." And I said, "Well, I could make a hat, but because it's bulkier weight yarn, it would be kind of like a weird consistency to the finished product. It would be too thick and not real comfortable to wear." So I was like, "I think it'll be a scarf." And she says, "Okay, I could use a scarf." So I made the scarf, and then I had some beads here in my craft things. So I decided to make like a little pendant to put on the point of the V for the scarf, and it turned out really cute. So once I give it to her and she has a chance to put it on, I can take a few pictures. Maybe she'll let me post some pictures in an upcoming video. So we'll see how that goes. And those are the things that I made this week. For reading this week, with all the stitching that I was doing and some painting that I did. When I paint, I don't try to listen to stuff because I have to kind of focus, and I don't know, it just takes more brain power for me to paint than it does to crochet. So I didn't do quite as much reading this week as I usually do. But I finished one book, the follow-up to last week's book by Donna, Barba, Higuera. The title of the book is Alebrijes. This book is kind of a companion book to last week's book, where the main characters are like escaping Earth when Halley's Comet is on a collision path with Earth. Alebrijes is actually kind of like the 400 years after the catastrophic event. People that did not have an opportunity to escape Earth on this event ended up going like underground, and apparently spent the time that they survived like kind of in maybe like bunkers or something. But these are like their descendants, and so the people that are on Earth are kind of living like a dystopian existence. There's like a faction of people that control all the wealth, and people that are quite poor. It kind of makes me almost think of like Aladdin, how Aladdin's kind of like a street urchin and he's out trying to like fend for himself. The main character of the story is kind of that way with his little sister, trying to just make the most of what they can where they can kind of like trick people into giving them things, or even worse, stealing from people. And that's kind of how this story evolves, in that in defense of his sister, the young boy takes the fall for a theft that they were discovered to be part of, and he gets like exiled, and someone tries to help him to not be executed. Instead of him kind of like losing his life because of it, she puts him into kind of like a suspended consciousness, and he ends up in like this part of society where people think it's like it doesn't really exist, and it's more like a cautionary existence that they talk about, not realizing that it's actually like a real place where people get like cast off to when they are found guilty of some crime. And so he's there with a bunch of other exiles, and they come to the realization that like the government, for lack of a better way to say, is lying to everyone in order to be able to control people. And so then they try to figure out how they can come back and kind of overthrow the people that are in charge. And it was kind of a slow read. It was hard to kind of get into this story. And then, of course, the story eventually comes to an end, as stories do. And I would venture to say it sets up for a third book minimum, because the little sister character grows up and reaches out to our main character from the previous story, and that's basically how the book ends. So it'll be interesting to see if a third book is released. Even though this was a pretty slow read and last week's wasn't that much quicker, I'd be interested to see how things play out between the two worlds, and how Pedra, that was her name, how Pedra reacts to finding out that Earth did not end. It wasn't destroyed. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the story plays out. I can see a lot of fun things happening with the different characters and what have you. So yeah, that's the only book that I finished this week. I'm most of the way through a second book, which I will talk about next week. But yeah, that was, like I said, pretty much all I had time to do this week. For watching, all the shows that I watch are back from hiatus, so we watched our typical Will Trent, Shifting Gears, both series of 911 that are on ABC now, and of course Grey's Anatomy. I love my Grey's Anatomy. I am a diehard fan of Grey's Anatomy. Have pretty much been watching from the very first season, so yeah. I was satisfied with the cliffhanging stuff that was resolved with the first episode of the new season. Yeah, just excited to see what plays out for the rest of the season. So, and then General Hospital, which we watch every day. Finally, the cat is out of the bag as to who shot Drew, and I was yelling and screaming at the TV, and Tim was like, "You called it." So it'll be interesting to see how they continue with what's going on. Yeah, they're still going to be dragging it out, though. I was hoping that it would just be like, let us know who it is, and then kind of draw to an end and wrap things up, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. So, oh well. We'll just have to keep moving along with the story as it is. So yeah. And then just today, I sat down with my husband, we had lunch together, and decided to turn on Netflix, and I got super excited when I saw that one of the books that I read last year is now a Netflix movie. So I was like, can we watch this? And the name of the movie is People We Meet on Vacation. I really enjoyed the book, and I was like, okay, let's see how they did. It was an okay movie. The book was better, and that's something that I almost always say, so don't be surprised to hear me say the book was better. They were fairly true to the story, the novel, but there were just a few things that I was like, why did they change that? They didn't need to change that. It was really good the way it was written. Huh. So yeah, that was that. But if you're into like the rom-com type genre, it was a decent movie. So yeah, not like a 5-star review or anything, but it was good. We enjoyed it. And then on Tubi, we started watching Different Strokes, Tim and I, in the evening. I was like, oh, you have to watch an episode just to see what it's all about. So he indulged me and watched an episode, and he goes, yeah, I can see you enjoying this when you were a kid. It tracks. Like, I could see you and Aunt Patty and your friends all talking about it at school and stuff. So he didn't have any like rave reviews about it, but he thought it was moderately amusing. So I guess for Tim, that's a fairly glowing review on it. And then this week, I promised that I would show you the finished product of my watercolor, that I did a fairly lengthy video earlier in the week of me painting with my watercolors. So I will pop up the picture of that here. And yeah, other life events. There was a pretty heavy downpour of rain on Thursday that the roof of my house did not appreciate. So we have a little bit of a leaky roof happening. And in the moment, that felt very overwhelming and just quite bothersome. It made the evening a bit stressful, but then after having some time to sit and kind of ruminate over it, my mindfulness of just being grateful, I came to the realization and reminding myself that though it was not a good situation, you have a roof over your head that can become leaky. Always try to look for that little silver lining. There are many people in the world who don't have a roof over their head, so I should only be all too grateful that I have a roof. And yes, it is leaky, and we're going to need to fix it at some point, but there are bigger problems in the world than a leaky roof. So after having some time, I was able to just kind of take a deep breath and be grateful for the fact that I have a roof, even if it is a leaky one. So I guess maybe that can be a little bit of a message for the new year, is to be grateful for the things that we do have. I always try to look on the bright side of things and realize that things can always be worse. but at least sit back, examine the things that I do have to be grateful for, and I'm definitely grateful for the roof that I have over my head. It's a tiny little house that just has served me quite well over the last almost 20 years, so definitely I feel very blessed and happy to have all the things that I do have. So on that note, I really appreciate you stopping by, taking some time to listen to me and all my craziness week after week. And if this is your first time here, hopefully you enjoyed what you were watching and you consider subscribing. Please don't forget to hit the like button after you watch the video, just to kind of let the powers that be know that you're here and you're watching and you appreciate the video. And if you so choose, go ahead and leave a comment. I try to give some kind of reaction, whether it be just the simple heart or if I can think of something thoughtful to respond to the comments, I do that. So if you don't get a comment back, it's just because I don't really have anything fantastic to say. I don't want to just be like, hey, yeah, cool, thanks. But do know that I read all the comments, and I appreciate what all of you have to say, and I appreciate all of you stopping by to give me a watch. So until next week, remember to be grateful for what you have, even the little things, and even the things that may seem challenging. All right, until next week.